So as you can see here, the kits are getting to be of the size that it's about time to get them out of the pen with mama. They're just getting too big. They don't poop in the same place that the doe poops, so it's creating a situation. I need to get them. This guy here, he turned out to be a buck, and this is Mama Cass over here to the left. But you can see he's getting to be the size now where he's going to have to be put into a grow out pen. So we're working on that today, but I want to show you the bunnies here right quick, just because man, they grow so fast. I wasn't ready for this yet. I thought I'd have another week or two before I needed to make grow out cages, but the time has come. This is the mama in this cage right here. She's pretty skittish, and we tried to rebreed the other day, and she was being pretty aggressive. We think it might have something to do with the fact that her kits are still in the pen with her. So that's one of the kits, female, and that's the other one over there. What are you doing, girl? And this one's kind of shy like her mama. Oh, of course, now that I say that, mama's gonna come right up here to the edge and sniff my hand and let me pet her. Oh, you being sweet today? The other day when we were trying to breed them, she was growling at my wife when my wife was trying to get them out of there. So obviously I need to clean up, and one of my failures here on this pen is that you can see right here there's poo collecting right here. I better close the gate or you guys are going to try to jump out. But I was just basically reusing what I had. I had some shelves in here like this here, and I pulled the center boards out and straddled the cages over there. And I thought that would be enough support, and it was enough support, but the problem is the poo collects right there, so it makes it very difficult to clean. So I'm going to put some spacers in like I did over here on this section. I just put some little 1 by probably 1/2 inch by 1 inch wide boards in, and that gave me enough gap where I can get a bar in there and clean that little area where the poo collects. This is where the baby likes to poop over here, the little boy. And mama likes to go over here. So I've got these catch pans down below where I can, for the most part, it catches about 90% of it. I can just pick these up about once a week and go dump them directly in my garden. It's been a pretty good system. These rabbits, once they pick a spot to go to the bathroom, they're going to continually go to the same spot. So my buck here, my breeding buck, he's super friendly. And this cage was already made, but I put the door in it. Hey, buddy. Hey, Peter. We don't name the kits, but the breeding pairs that we're keeping, the trio that we're keeping, we've named them. This one here is Peter Cottontail, because he just kind of has that classic cottontail look. But anyway, I thought I'd show you guys today how we're going to put together a grow out cage for our rabbits, because it's time to get these teenage bunnies out of the pen with mama. All right, what you're going to need for this project is some hardware cloth. This stuff here is 24 inch by 25 foot, 1/2 inch squares. And look for the stuff that's heavier duty. I don't know what the gauge is on this one, but this is the heavier duty of the two they had available over there at Lowe's or Home Depot or wherever my wife picked that up. But you're going to need some of that. You're going to need some way to cut that wire, whether you use scissors like this that are sheet metal scissors, or you could use a grinder. I've done that before, an angle grinder with a cut-off wheel on it. That works great. It's really fast. You're also going to need some of these pliers here. They're special pliers that I had to have my wife order on Amazon because I couldn't find them locally. And you're going to need some of these. I believe they call them J-hooks. You can go find all this stuff on Amazon, and my wife bought a little kit where it came with 2 bags of these J-hooks and the pliers, and it wasn't a whole lot of money, but I've gone through a lot more of these J-hooks than I expected. So order extra J-hooks if you're going to be building a lot of cages. So let's get set up here. We'll make some cuts. You need to decide your dimensions. Before you start this project, you might want to do some research on how large of a cage you want to build. That's up to you. That depends on your space. I'm going to try to build one that's about 48 inches long by about 24 inches deep by about 18 inches tall. That's what we're going for, because that's the space I have to work with. So and this is not going to be a permanent spot for them. It's just going to be a place where I can put the grow outs when they're ready to come out of the cage with mama, but before they're ready to go on in a cage of their own or on the dinner plate, because these are meat rabbits. So let's get set up here and we'll make some cuts and show you how it goes. All right, it kind of helps if you've got a nice big table to work with that's nice and flat. That'll give you a chance to kind of get the thing up off the ground where you're not having to do it down on the floor. If you don't have a big table like this, you could do it on the floor. I did my last one on the floor, but I don't feel like kneeling down and doing that today, especially while I'm trying to film. So anyway, when you unwrap the wire from the plastic and you take the wire around the outside, just be ready. It's going to, come apart. Like that, and it's going to be a little bit unwieldy, but we're going to use the majority of if not all of this roll, we're going to use the majority of this roll to do this project. So to start with, we're going to roll out 4 pieces that are 48 inches long for the bottom, the top, and the 2 sides. So we'll get that started, and I'll show you how to cut this. We're not going to show you all the cuts. I'm just going to show you on one piece. Okay, so I find it's better to get it flat if you unroll it this way versus the other way. It helps to kind of flatten things out. Since I have it up on the table and I've kind of got it hooked around the end down there, I'm going to be able to hang the end of this off the side of the table, I think. That actually worked out better than I expected. But that's what you want to do, is try to create nice flat pieces like that. You can bend them a little bit in the opposite direction to kind of flatten them out and kind of push them down. Okay, so now we're going to mark off our 48 inches. Measure twice, cut once. So 48 worked out to be just on the other side of this line right here. So once you got one side marked, you should be able to keep it in alignment enough to where you'll be able to cut straight all the way down. Okay, we're going to take our scissors, and I try to cut as close to the cage as I possibly can without cutting into the other wire. Alright, there's our first piece. Not too bad. I just got to do that 3 more times and we'll be ready to start the assembly. Alright, it's time for the fun part. We're going to start clamping the sides to the bottom. So the reason it matters, whether it's the top or the bottom, is that I'm going to put more clamps on the bottom run. I like to put them about every 2 inches on the bottom, and then about every 4 inches on the sides and on the top. So you can put them in every single square if you want to. I've seen some people do that, but I think that's a bit excessive. So we'll grab one of these clamps and you just put it in there like that. Hopefully you can see that well enough. We'll start at the corner. And just clamp it all the way. And we're just going to work our way down. We'll skip 2 squares and put another one. Just repeat that process all the way down, making sure that you're hooking into the bottom of both wires. All right, we'll just work our way down the line. I'll come back to you here in a minute when we've got this side all done and we're ready to install the top. All right, I'm going to show you guys the easiest way that I've found to put these things together. I've already got the two sides attached to the bottom. As you can see, there's one side and there's the other side. I just fold them in like that on themselves so they're out of the way. Next up, we're going to put the top on, and let's see here. How do I want to do that? Just like that. Okay. We're going to line up the two corners. Just like that. And I never put as many clamps on the top section because it's less likely that they're going to poke their head through or anything like that. So I'd say about every 4 inches or so is good. It's much easier to put these clamps on when everything's laying flat like this. If you're trying to do it when it's in a cube form, it's going to fight you the whole way. And honestly, if you get off by a space or two on one of these clamps, it's not the end of the world. Don't worry about it. Just put an extra clamp in if you have to, or if you need to. Okay, so now we've got our sides connected. We've got to the bottom, and we've got one side connected to the top. So let's see if we can find a way that we can connect that last side where it'll stay flat. Okay, so no matter how you slice it on this section right here, this last section is going to be a little bit harder because you're having to deal with, instead of just having two pieces laying on top of each other, you're going to have to actually close that gap with your fingers until you get the clamp started, and make sure you go all the way around everything. But this is the easiest way I've found. Rather than trying to hold it up in a square form, this seems to be a lot easier. Keep it flat as long as possible. And what you can do is take your tool and hook it in like that, and then kind of twist it back, all while clamping it at the same time, and then you should be able to get something like that. So I'm going to repeat the process every 3.5 inches or so all the way down on this other side of the top, and then when we come back we'll work on the ends. All right, now it's time for the moment of truth, the fun part, where it starts to actually look like a cage. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Next up, we've got to measure and mark the two ends and attach them. And what I like to do in that regard is I'll get my table out of the way, and I'll just stand it up here on the end so that I can measure that and attach that easily. All right, as you can see, I've got that kind of squared up. You can see it's still got a lot of bow to it just from the shape of the being rolled up, but we'll get that straightened out when we start attaching these sides. And once we're done there, we'll just have to work on the door. But yeah, I just thought we'd do something a little different here today. Get out of the doom and gloom news and start doing something that could help us put food on the table. We will not eat the bugs, Klaus Schwab. We will not do it. Chickens eat bugs. And we eat chickens and eggs. It can get a little tougher as you get close to the end because you have to manipulate the wire a little bit. But it looks like that's going to work out perfectly for us. So again, since my spacing is probably not going to work out perfectly, I'm probably going to skip one and put one in the middle here in a minute. Now it's starting to have some rigidity to it as I move it around. All right, and that's basically how you do it. So I've still got one more end to put on, but I'm not going to bore you guys with that. We'll come back and I'll have that other end installed, and we'll start working on the door opening because that's a critical part of the operation. I personally don't like the all-wire doors because what happens is even if you put tubing or something on the edges, inevitably you'll get cut sliding in and out of there or operating the door. This wire is extremely sharp. No matter what you do, you're going to get poked and prodded when you're doing this operation. All right, I just wanted to give you guys a close-up of how I'm constructing these door openings and the doors themselves. As you can see, I'm just layering some old scrap boards. These are like probably a 1/2 inch thick by about 1.5 inches wide. They were just some old boards I had around, and it's working out really well. I'm using some sheetrock screws from the front side through to connect everything together, and I've got this board, let's see, focus up. I've got the back board overlapping this board, so it kind of creates a way to stabilize everything. Hopefully that makes sense the way I showed that there. So you can see here, I'm not going right on the edge of the cage because I don't want these little pokey bits sticking out. I want it to be nice and smooth for anybody that's going in and out of this cage. So the last board here, I just cut this. Hopefully it'll fit. So the idea is we get this even, and I'm actually just eyeballing it the best I can here, but I can see that's a little uneven there, so I'm gonna have to come up with that back section. I'm just trying to get it to where there's no high spots on this board so that when my door opens and closes, it won't be catching on that. So I'm going to take this welding clamp, because that's what I've got handy here, and we're just going to clamp that down, and then I'll go and run some screws in. I'll make sure everything's nice and even first, but I think you get the idea. That's how I'm creating these frames. So yes, there is some wood on the inside of the cage, but so far my rabbits haven't been eating that wood. But I put little branches and things like that. You got to go through the whole list. We've got mulberry trees. They seem to really like those, and also maple tree limbs. I try to put little branches and limbs in there with the bunnies so that they're always having something to munch on besides the wood of the cage. And so far that's worked out really well. Mine aren't really interested in chewing up the cage, so I can get away with this. But I like a nice big opening. That's about 22, 23 inches wide, something like that. And it's almost the whole height of the cage, so it's about a 15-inch opening. That gives me plenty of room to get all the way inside of the cage. So I really like that. Anyway, when we come back, we'll be working on the door. All right, I thought I'd give you a quick shot of how I'm making these doors here for the rabbit cage. Basically, I took the square of metal that I cut out for the door opening, and I saved that. I cut off all the end tabs, and I actually had to cut one row off just to make it fit in my space here. But basically what I've done here is I've got on mine, the back board here, the bottom board that you're seeing is about 14 inches long. That's roughly just under, like a 1/4 inch under the size of the opening. So you want to give yourself plenty of clearance so that your door can open and close. And so I usually go for about a 1/4 inch. And what I figure is that's going to leave me about 1/8 of an inch on each side of the door if everything works out, because these boards aren't perfectly straight. Some of them have warps and bows and bends and twists in them, and I'm just using old wood. So if you're using new wood, you probably wouldn't have these same problems. But to work with that, the way I'm doing it is I put a 14-inch board on the back and a 21.5 inch board on the front. And now what that allows me to do is fill in the gaps here and here, and that space happens to be 11 inches on both of these. And then when I'm done with that side, I can flip it over, and I'll have to measure what this longer one is going to be right here, and that will push all that wire down nice and flat, and basically creating a sandwich around the cage with wood. And then that gives me something nice and solid to install in the door opening. All right, so hopefully you can see how I'm putting these things together here. I've got the last layer to put on, and we're just going to insert this right here and clamp it down and screw it down. The board's a little twisted. So I'm just going to try to line up the bottom here by eyeball. And by feel. And I'm a little bit proud right there. You see it sticking out right there. It's no good. So we'll move that up a little. And we're just looking at the bottom, making sure we're lined up pretty well, making sure there's nothing sticking out. And because I'm using old wood, I like to pre-drill these holes. And if I've got some twist in it like that, I'm putting it to the side that's high. See how it's a little bit higher right there? So I'm going to put it up on this end. And I'm trying to drill between the squares of the cage. And I've been going about 3 or 4 screws on the top or the bottom, just depending on how much twist it has in it. Might have to put more in this one because I can see quite a bit of twist there. Alright, now that I've got a few screws in there, I can get the clamps out of the way. And I've got a nice flat table here to build this off of, so I can kind of keep an eye. If it starts getting a little bit out of alignment or a little bit twisted, I can kind of bend it and manipulate it a little bit like that. Also, on my other cages, I went ahead and put a center bar in. I'm not sure I'll do that or not. I don't know that it's really necessary. I just did it for adding rigidity to this door. Just to keep it consistent, I think I will. So next up, we're going to see if this fits, make sure that the door fits in the opening, and then work on the hinges. Alright, so the good news is the door fit into the opening real nicely. If it didn't fit, you could always trim it down a little bit and make it fit. But I wanted to show you guys one of the little tricks that I use to get these things squared up where they'll still have a nice gap around them all the way. So as you can see, I've got a couple of paint sticks down here on the bottom, and that's just keeping a gap down there at the bottom. And I've already installed one screw here, and I'm going to just lightly thread in a screw right here. I'm not going crazy with it or anything, and I just want it to be flat and level on the face right here. Everything's feeling good. I'm liking that. It should be tight enough now that I should be able to install my hinges. Okay, I just remembered on these hinges, you can see how that plate there, that flat part, is beyond where this part is. It's made to mount on the back side of a cabinet. And what I had to do was straighten this out. So I'm going to get this over on my vise. We're not going to do that on the camera, but I'm going to straighten this little Z-bend right here out to where these are relatively level. That's what we're after here, and that would get it close. And that's what I did last time. It worked out just fine, so we're going to go with that again. Alright, so I was able to flatten those hinges out. They're just regular cabinet hinges, but I was able to flatten those out with my hammer and my vise to where they'll close flat now. The reason I'm using these is because I got them really cheap. They were on clearance at a place that I went to, and I knew they'd be great for rabbit hutches and chicken coops and things like that. So as you can see, I have some screws up here, just kind of lightly threaded in. And also I have some paint sticks down on the bottom. I don't think you can see the one over here, but there's another one over here. And the idea of that is to create a gap all the way around so that when I screw my hinges on and I open and close the door, there won't be any interference or anything like that. So let's get this last hinge screwed on. Screwing this part's a little bit harder because as you're pushing in with the impact driver, you have to push it pretty hard to keep contact with the screw head, but it's going to try to push away from this right here, so you just have to grab on as tight as you can. Okay, took all the spacers out. Now I should be able to open it. I'm getting a little bit of interference right there on that top corner. Right there. I'm not sure it's going to be enough of an issue to make a difference. It's actually working pretty well. It's going past it. But because of the nature of wood, it swells and, you know, expands and contracts and stuff when it gets moist. I think I'm going to take my plane or maybe a spoke shave and clean that off a little bit. That'll do it. No clearance problems. So guys, if you've made it this far in the video, I appreciate it. There's only one last thing for me to do, and that is install one of these guys here, just a latch mechanism. I tend to like these kind here, and we'll just install that right over here on this side. And actually, when I was talking earlier and I was saying, I'm not sure if I'll put the center board in, this board right here, the reason that I go ahead and install that board is so that I have a place to get a good purchase with this class block here. So we'll install that something like that, and the hook side on this other side, and then we'll be able to open this up, get all the way inside. I don't have to worry about sharp edges or sharp pieces of this cage scratching me up forever, because that's what will happen if you leave the edges. Even if you put the plastic, the tubing around there, it's going to fall off and you're eventually going to scratch yourself. So personally speaking, I really prefer this style of cage that has a nice wooden door. And also this wooden door frame gives the cage, the front part of the cage, a lot more structure than it would have if it didn't have the wooden frame. So that's pretty much it, guys, other than installing a little clasp block, and I think you can figure that out. There are all different kinds of locks out there. And also I'm going to have to put a feeder in here. You can see I offset the door just a little bit to this side. I figured I'd put the feeder over here on the right side and the water bottle over here on this side. So I'm really excited to get this in there and get all of our kits. We've only got 3 right now, but I should be able to get all of them in there tomorrow. And I think they'll be a lot happier, and the 2 does will be a lot happier, because it's just that time to get those kits out of the cage with Mama. So anyway, I appreciate you tuning in. I hope this was helpful for you and you picked up something, or maybe you learned how to make a rabbit cage. Maybe it'll inspire you to go out and get yourself a backyard herd of rabbits. It's a really great investment. It's a great time to do it. It's a great thing to do with your family and your kids, because I don't think enough people know where their food comes from these days. So be a good lesson to teach kids and things like that, or maybe teach yourself. So appreciate you guys tuning in. Hit the thumbs up if you like it. If you have any suggestions or any advice on how you've made your rabbit cages work better for you, let me know down in the comments. I always love reading them. And until then, we'll see you next time.